Break, I was telling the truth. You all apparently have enjoyed the opportunity to meet each other, and we're delighted that you've had that opportunity. Part of the benefit of events like this is to get to know some new people, and so thank you all for being here. There's one other group that I would like to recognize before I introduce Mike Esterday. We have a program in our Lipscomb Academy that is a very interesting program, and I think you might be interested to know a little bit about it. We have 1,200 or so students in our K through 12 program in Lipscomb Academy. A couple of years ago, the high school faculty started a program called Ignite. And for the last couple of years, they've had Ignite Engineering and Ignite Healthcare. So students in the academy can sign up for areas where they think they might have a professional interest in college and beyond. This year, for the first time, we're going to inaugurate Ignite Business. And we're delighted this morning, even in the summertime when a lot of the high school kids are working and maybe enjoying the pool and other summer activities, we're delighted to have Jerry Woods, who is a Lipscomb Academy parent and one of the senior officers of Pinnacle Bank. And Jerry has brought with him, I think, about 8 or 10 of the Ignite students. So will you all please stand and let us recognize the Lipscomb Academy Ignite students. Thank you all for being here. Thank you. This is a program where our faculty will partner with Jerry and the Academy faculty, and they'll do lots of interesting things throughout the year. They'll visit various businesses. They'll come over and share classes with our college students. They'll get a real taste for business, and we're very excited about that. So, as we make the clubhouse turn and head to the home stretch here, I am really excited about introducing Mike Esterday. Mike has been a friend of mine for at least 30 years, I guess. Now, Mike, you lose the contest. Mike did not come from the further reaches of the globe. You traveled, I know it was a long journey this morning, but you came from Woodmont Boulevard, I believe, right? Where Mike and his wife have lived for many years. When I first met Mike 30 years ago, Mike and a partner owned a business called Continual Learning Institute, still do, I think, and they were training prospective real estate agents and brokers to pass the real estate licensing exams. And then Mike added to that, over the years, a business called Integrity Solutions. And he has evolved as a worldwide trainer of salespeople and leaders, particularly in the area of integrity selling. Now, Mike, I'm an old salesman, and I happen to think that all of us are salespeople in one form or another. And sometimes salespeople don't have the best reputations, but you've done a great job traveling around the world, working with huge corporations and instilling ideas of value and service. And so we're really looking forward to your presentation this morning. His biography is in the program, but I hope you will join me now in welcoming Mike Esterday.
Well, good morning. Good morning. You probably heard my name correctly. It's Mike Esterday, just like yesterday without the Y. I get a lot of kidding about that. In fact, in high school, my nickname was Tomorrow. Today, tomorrow. I'm very excited about being with you. It's very rare that I'm speaking this close to home. Usually we're flying off someplace and talking to various groups. Let me get a feel for the audience. How many, we know the high school students, how many undergrad or grad Lipscomb students are in the audience? A number there, okay. How many Lipscomb faculty do we have? Okay, several. And the rest, I'm assuming, are Lipscomb friends and folks in the business community, right? Okay. Let me ask you a question. As I start this, I'd like to throw out a question, and if we can get that to come up. Well, I'm going to ask you the question without the slide. The slide is, if we stopped 100 people on the street here in Nashville or in Hong Kong or in Connecticut or any place and asking this question, what kind of response do you think we would get? And the question is, what do you think of when you think of a salesperson? What do you think of when you think of a salesperson? And be honest with me, what do you think most people would say? What are some words? Used car. I heard that a bunch of times. Okay, what else? Pushy, okay? Greedy? Okay, what else? What was that one? Rat? Ratbird. Okay, I haven't heard that one before. I've asked that question all over the world, and what I find is that 9 out of 10 people always say something negative. Just as Chip and Ted talked this morning about negative impressions of business, I think when you think about salespeople, it's usually amped up a little bit more. Wouldn't you agree? Most people don't have a positive view of salespeople. And it's hard to blame them. I grew up on a farm in northern Illinois. This is what my farm looked like back when I was about 10 years old. And I was so blessed. I had a wonderful mother and father, and I was with my dad a lot on the farm. And I'll never forget, I was probably 10 years old. And you notice we're on a gravel road. And if we could go farther on the right, if I had a picture, there's a hill. We could always tell when there's someone coming because the dirt would start kicking up on that gravel road. And one day my dad, he noticed the car, and we're standing there in the barnyard, and he turned to me and he told me what was going to happen because it was a salesperson. He told me what was going to happen to us. And sure enough, this guy pulls up in the shiny car. He hops out all dressed up, and we sure weren't dressed up. And he has a smile that didn't look very sincere. And I have to believe that that image I had at age 10, what my father told me, impacted my view of selling. Well, how many of us have had those types of experiences? Somebody calls you at 6 o'clock, even though you're on the do not call list. You know, you walk into a store and someone right away tries to push a product down your throat. How many times does media say something positive about salespeople? Pretty rare. We look at most things that are out there on movies, Death of a Salesman. How many saw Glengarry Glen Ross? Yeah, classic movie, good acting, not too good about salespeople. Tin Men, a bunch of shysters trying to sell siding and roofing to people. The TV show, it's a little bit while back, WKRP in Cincinnati. Remember the guy in the plaid jacket and so forth? Tommy Boy, Boiler Room, Cadillac Man, and finally the latest one, The Wolf of Wall Street. How many saw that movie? That is a really nasty movie. I can't believe I sat through the whole thing. Really nasty movie, really good acting, but terrible view of salespeople. Well, I don't think there's many people out there advocating for good salespeople. They're good and bad in every profession, as we've talked about. Here is how we define selling. With integrity selling, we believe it's identifying needs, filling those needs, and creating value for individuals and for organizations. When people have a positive view of what selling is, we think a lot of those negative words will be replaced with positive ones like care, serve, noble, trust. What we're really talking about is effective communication. When we define selling as persuading someone to take action on some type of an idea, a whole lot of people sell. I'd like to ask you, how many people sell in America? What percent of Americans do you think sell? Pure sales, statistically, they say 1 out of 9, the government says, are in pure sales. I read something recently where it said about 25% of college graduates end up in sales, and I think it may actually be higher than that. But when you take into account things like on the left-hand column, more and more of us today are selling something. We're trying to sell something on eBay, on Craigslist, whatever it might be. Maybe we're selling ourselves to get a job, or to find a friend, or a date. At the bottom, Kickstarter, maybe we have a new business. We're trying to get some funding. We've got to sell people on funding that business. We have TV shows now that are more positive about selling, things like Shark Tank. We have a family that comes in with an idea that they have, and they want to sell that because it creates value for people. If you look at a study that was done recently by Qualtrics, it was published in a book called To Sell as Human by Daniel Pink, and it said that they went out and they looked at all kinds of jobs, and they said that about 40% of the actual work people do could be classified as sales. Maybe you're trying to get a proposal approved. Maybe you're trying to communicate something to another department. Maybe we're trying to get a promotion. Maybe we're interacting with a customer and causing them to do something that's for their benefit. If 40% of all the people are selling for the activities, the question is what percent of people are really selling? And I believe that just about everybody sells. I was talking to Trace ahead of time, in the law profession, it'd be nice. How many here are in the law profession? The others besides Trace? Unfortunately, not all clients show up and say, hey, I want you to represent me. That'd be nice, but that's not the way it works. How many here are in healthcare? Several healthcare? Okay. In healthcare, we've got to be able to sell the patients that come into our hospital. The doctor's got to be able to persuade people to actually complete their prescriptions. There's all kinds of selling going on. This wonderful university would not be here without people selling students on paying to attend, without selling donors on giving money to build these fabulous buildings. So we all sell. This is supposed to come up first with that person's picture. Anybody seen that guy before? This guy is named Otto Rohwedder, and Otto was a guy born in Iowa, and he was in the early 1900s. He invented something that was part of our everyday life now, and it kind of gave it away. Best thing since sliced bread. He invented the tool that sliced bread effectively and caused people to be able to have it and package it properly. The thing interesting about that is for 13 years he worked on this. He invented it, but it took 13 years before it was actually very popularized. He couldn't get anybody to buy it. And finally, Wonder Bread came along, and they popularized it, and now we just think of sliced bread. So my point is, even if you were to invent something that is the greatest thing since sliced bread, it still has to be sold. So if we think about success factors, if all of us are going to be selling, the question is, what is it that causes us to be successful? If this is a basic skill that we need to have, what are the key things? And if we look at two parts, knowledge and technical skill on the top, and attitudes, values, beliefs, and motives at the bottom, what percent of people's success is due to that second part? I ask that question a lot, and typically people tell me 60, 70, 80, 90% of people's success is due to their values, their beliefs, their achievement drive, their motives, how they interact with people. It's the softer stuff, not the intellectual stuff, that causes them to be successful. A lot of people know what to do, but they still don't do it. We believe that about 85% of salespeople's success is due to those issues. That there's more success due to their attitudes, beliefs, and values than the knowledge that they have. In your little pocket guide, you have a little thing that when you came in, if you pick this up, fine. If not, it's up here on the screen. On the inside left-hand panel has a list of what we call integrity selling, values, and ethics. And these are some things we believe about selling. For example, number one, selling is a mutual exchange of value. Number two, it's something you do. It's not something you do to people. It's something you do for and with them. Take a moment, if you will, and just kind of look through those and pick out a couple that resonate for you. Think about how different that is than most people think of selling. Number three, develop trust and rapport before any selling activity begins. Number seven, ethics and values contribute more to sales success than techniques or strategies. I'd like to share with you on the inside, on the right-hand side, there's a model called the sales congruence model. And on that, there are 5 dimensions I'm going to walk through just briefly of what we believe impacts sales success. When we talk about selling, we're really talking about effective communication. The first one on the left is view of selling. If we could get inside my head, your people's heads that you work with, and find out what they really think selling is, I wonder what we'd find. I think it'd be probably, on one side, wow, what a noble profession. I'm helping people. I'm creating value for people. On the other hand, it might be, I was supposed to be a doctor. I was supposed to be a lawyer. It's supposed to be something else. But I ended up in selling because I got to make money to pay my car and my house and my kids' education. We believe that the view of selling people have is greatly determining their success. If I believe I'm creating value for people, I'm clear on my purpose, I'm going to work at a stronger level than if I think I'm embarrassed that I'm a salesperson. A quick example, Mike Fisher, one of our colleagues, was given a presentation with a group, a pharmaceutical company in Chicago. And a bunch of reps were in the room, and someone stopped and said, Mike, that's my problem, view of selling. I call in a doctor. I'm in the waiting room. I know everybody's looking at me saying, this is why healthcare is so expensive. The drugs are too expensive. So I got to wait for the doctor, and I'm kind of embarrassed, and I'm a drug rep. And another one in the room said, well, I had the same feeling until I went to a camp, and the drug to help them with bipolar and some other things. So this person went to the camp and talked to the parents, and they said, you don't know what a difference it is in our life with the medications that you sell that our kids take. And the person said, from that point forward, I stopped selling drugs, and I started helping kids. So often it's reframing our mindset of what we're doing. What am I accomplishing in the job? The second thing is called view of abilities. Do I believe I have the abilities to be successful at whatever I'm doing? Maybe I thought, well, I was average in school, I was average in sports, I was average in my last 2 jobs, I'm probably average here. Or maybe it's like Harriet Butler and her husband, I've been number one at everything I've ever done. I'm going to figure out a way to be number one. Most people tend to perform at the level they think they can perform at. And as John Maxwell talks about, we hit a lid. It's like a lid that we hit that we don't believe that we can perform at a higher level. That's the second key thing. The third thing is values. We put this in the center on purpose because we believe that values are the core piece that really drives success in selling and in business. Values like honesty, being trustworthy, doing the right thing, following up. Values is the bedrock of the whole process. I was watching a TV show the other night, and at the commercial, there's a Maytag commercial that came on. Have y'all seen these new ones? They've got this new young guy, this Maytag man. Used to be this short, kind of balding, dumpy guy. Now I've got this kind of buff guy that's the Maytag man. And at the end of the commercial, it comes on and it says, Maytag, what's inside matters. I think that's true in selling and it's true in life. What's inside really matters. The fourth issue there is commitment to activities. And that's 2 parts. Do I clearly understand the activities necessary to be successful? And number 2, am I willing to do them? There's an old saying that when all things are said and done, there's a whole lot of things said and not much done. I don't know about you, but too often I know a lot more of what I ought to be doing than what I actually do. So am I willing to do the activities that are necessary in my job? It wouldn't be proper to talk in Nashville without Jackie talking about country music. And I don't know if in Hong Kong the Zac Brown Band is popular at all. But the Zac Brown Band has a song called As She's Walking Away. And part of the lyrics say, I couldn't find the words to say. My heart won't tell my mind to tell my mouth what it should say. Now I'm falling in love as she's walking away. Just as with that kind of relationship where he says, I wish I would have done something, how many times in life do you say, I know I should do something, but I don't do it? Commitment to activities. The final one is belief in product. And belief in product, let me ask you, is that important? Absolutely. Whatever we're selling, whether it's a university, whether it's a product, whether it's a service, whether it's ourselves for a job, we have to believe in it. But it's not just believing in our product, it's believing in 3 things as a salesperson. Believing in what you sell. Number 2, it's believing in the organization that you represent. And number 3, it's believing in yourself. Because not always are there products and services that are of equal value, but often now there's a lot of parity in products. So even if there's parity, or even if someone else is cheaper than what I'm selling, I still believe the value is in what I bring to the table and what my organization brings to the table. I mean, think about Lipscomb. If all you want is a ticket for an education, there's a lot of places you can get it a lot less expensive. But there's a whole lot of things you don't get other places either. Now, in this model, there are some arrows, and the arrows stand for gaps. Gaps are problems. So in between, let's take a couple examples. In the center, let's say that you have someone who's got great values, positive values, honest as the day is long. They have a core view of selling. What we'll see is they are so nice, they don't want to offend people, they don't want to ask them to go to a next step. They become educators. They end up just talking about what their product has, and they don't actually ask them to take some step. Professional selling is not just talking, it's asking people to take some kind of a commitment to do something different. Maybe you've got a positive view of selling, but a poor view of abilities. Because I think I'll just be average, even though I think it's a noble profession, I may not do the activities and believe that I can perform at a higher level. What we like to see is organizations that address these 5 issues and create an organization where the view of selling is this is a noble profession. It is identifying needs, filling needs, and creating value. If that's what it is, I can do that because it's consistent with my positive values. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to be successful at that because I believe in what I'm selling and the value I create for customers. So what we want to do is bring into alignment, reduce those gaps, bring into congruence or alignment those issues. And when we do, on the left-hand side it says, this releases achievement drive. Now think about anything you do in life, when you believe you can accomplish it, when you believe it's worthwhile, it creates energy. And that's what we want to do. If you have that little pocket guide, I'd like to encourage you to rate yourself or pick someone in your company and rate them 1 to 10. 1 is a low point, 10 is a high point, and look at some of the high and low issues there. We work with a lot of very high-valued organizations, and even in those high-valued organizations, people typically have a lot of view of selling issues. And that view of selling issue, that bad view of selling tends to hold them back from being more successful. I'd like to end with a couple of key things, a couple of ideas to help develop sales skills. Number 1 is define your purpose. What do you want to accomplish? People that have a strong sense of purpose always do better. Whether it's in selling, serving, accounting, healthcare, whatever it might be. We work with a lot of healthcare organizations, and we have a client in Florida that they were doing our customer service process. And at the end of the course, we had someone give a little talk, and she was in nutrition. And she said, when I started this course, I thought, why am I here? I'm back in the kitchen making the food, and I'm here with doctors and nurses and all kinds of other professional people, but I make the Jell-O. She said, now I realize I have a stronger purpose than just making the Jell-O. She said, there are people that couldn't eat without the Jell-O that I make. There are kids I'm thinking about that are having fun playing in the Jell-O. There are older folks that haven't had Jell-O in a long time. And now I can proudly say, I make the Jell-O. And if you think about that, if each of our colleagues can have a stronger sense of purpose and clearly understand what we're accomplishing, how much more fun it will be, how much rewarding, and how much more productive we'll be in our organizations. So in sales, it's a mindset shift from how much will I sell today? It's a shift from a product focus or a transaction focus to who am I going to help today? How can I create value for people? The second point is ask questions. The typical view of salespeople is that they talk all the time, and too often they do. But what we try to teach is talk 20% and listen 80%. And asking questions. Wisdom is in the questions you ask, not in what you're saying. Because people are more apt to listen to you when they feel they can trust you. People are more apt to buy when they're talking than when you're talking. They're more apt to respond to information you ask them for than information you freely give them. And finally, number 3 is have a customer focus. Too often people are transaction focused. How can I sell this product? How can I get this transaction done? Instead of thinking, what's the customer need? What are their problems, their issues, their wants, their needs? And then how can I help fill those needs? And to the point that if you can't fill their needs, we walk away. If it's not the right match, you shouldn't do business with me. It says that people are more apt to say yes when trust and rapport are high than when selling pressure is high. People are more apt to see your point of view when you first see theirs. And people are more apt to buy when you communicate end result benefits than when you communicate only the product and service features. So 3 key points there that hopefully will be helpful. The world lost Maya Angelou over the past week. And one of my favorite quotes of hers is, people will forget what you said and did, but will never forget how you made them feel. As we interact with people in selling, communicating, any kind of business, how do we help people feel the right feelings? We believe that relationships matter, that values matter, that integrity matters in business. So with that, thank you very much, and
Thank you, Mike.
okay, well,
I'll join you.
water here.
Well, again, Mike, as we did earlier, we'll do some questions and answers now, if that's okay.
Sounds good.
Now, we gave a copy of Integrity Selling in the 21st Century, How to Sell the Way People Want to Buy, to everyone who attended this morning. And the name on the book is Ron Willingham, not Mike Yesterday. But there's a story here. So can I ask you to explain the relationship you have with Ron Willingham and how you came about that relationship?
Absolutely. Ron Willingham is in Texas. Let's start out in Texas. And he was a furniture store owner. And one day, his preacher came to him and said, our church needs a leadership course for men. And I think you could write that course. And Ron said, what? Me? I have a furniture store. And so he studied it and he worked on it, and this is back in the late 60s, and he wrote a leadership course that was then spread out across many churches across the United States. And then in the 70s, he did personal development courses. In the early 80s, he got real frustrated with the way sales was being taught. Tricks, manipulation, you say this, the customer says that, back and forth, closing techniques. And so he asked himself, how do I like to buy? How do I prefer to buy from people with integrity? So he took the buying experience, flipped it around, and he wrote the book Integrity Selling, of how do you actually interact and sell products and services with high values and ethics and integrity. And Ron now lives in Phoenix, Arizona, and in fact he has a scholarship here at Lipscomb that's been here for many years, and very proud of the students that he's been able to help support.
You started your career, I think, as a young salesperson at the Southwestern
That's correct.
Company. I want to explore who they are for those in the audience who may not be familiar with Southwestern. So why don't we start with that, and then I'll come back and talk about Spencer Hayes in just a minute.
The Southwestern Company in Nashville is, I think, the fourth or fifth oldest company in Nashville, founded in 1855. And what they're known for is recruiting college students to sell books door to door in the summertime. And that's how I paid my way through college. I grew up on this farm in Illinois and was sent to Texas and Kentucky and Pennsylvania and knocked on doors from 7:59 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. And boy, you learn a lot of lessons by doing that and a lot of rejection. But it's a great company because its motto is building character in young people and doing it the right way.
Now, I went to work for Tennessee Securities, actually while I was still in school, and so I didn't go through the Southwestern training program. But as I became a little bit more mature business person here in Nashville and met lots of folks, I was flabbergasted at how many executives, senior executives, CEOs and otherwise, had been products of the Southwestern program. So what was it about Southwestern that created all of these incredibly successful people?
I think a couple things. One was discipline. You learned discipline in spite of the emotional ups and downs of life. I'll never forget my first day selling books. I was 18 years old in Denton, Texas, and the first door I knocked on, they bought from me. I thought, wow, this is the easiest job I've ever had. I made, 10 or 12 bucks in the first 15 minutes. And 12 hours later, I didn't make another sale. I'm thinking, this is the worst job I've ever had. So you learn how to deal with rejection. You learn how to deal with your attitude. As we said before, probably 85% of success is attitude. A lot of folks come out of universities with a lot of book knowledge, but if they can't apply that in the real world, it's not going to be any good. It's not what you know, it's what you do with what you know. So I think Southwestern helps people teach some life skills that are really critical.
And we have a business person, very low-key, very low-profile business person who lives here in Nashville, a gentleman by the name of Spencer Hayes. Mm-hmm. And Spencer owns a number of different businesses, but one of the businesses he owns today is the Southwestern Company. And he was here on this campus maybe a year ago. We hosted a Southwestern group, and I had a chance to visit with Spencer. I hadn't seen him in a while, and he said, "Do you have my business card?" And of course, I knew how to get in touch with him, but I said, "No, I don't guess I do, Spencer. I'd like your email address." He said, "Well, it's really not on here, but let me give you my business card." And what he was trying to do was to get me to look at that business card. And that business card didn't say owner of Southwestern, owner of multiple other businesses. It just simply said Spencer Hayes, salesman, which I thought was amazing because he had all of these other qualifications. He told me, he said, "That's what I want on my tombstone. I just want them to put Spencer Hayes, salesman." So what would you, Mike, have put on your tombstone if you could choose?
That was definitely not a prepared question.
Sorry to hit you out of left field there.
Probably something along the lines of, he did his best to do the right thing. I think when I was selling books, I'll never forget my first summer. I knocked on a door, and there's a lady in her 70s, and I didn't sell her a book. I was only there about 15 minutes. But for some reason, we connected, and she told me why she wished she'd had a better relationship with her husband, who had died. Wished she would have had a job, but it wasn't appropriate for women back then to have the kind of job she wanted. Wished she was closer to her kids. And as an 18-year-old hopping off that porch, I thought, I don't want to be 75 years old and look back and say, I wish I would have, I wish I would have. So I think what I try to do and what our organization try to do is how do we help people accomplish more of what their potential is? How do we help them take off the lid that they have and accomplish more of what the gifts that God gave them?
Okay, great answer. Sorry I caught you off guard.
No, that's fine.
Let's take some questions from the audience. Anyone? Yes, sir.
When you're having a great day, when somebody says, yes, I'll buy, selling the product or yourself is easy. But when somebody says no, what are some tips you have for overcoming the rejection in that down?
Well, a wise person once said that great things happen when you talk to people. So whether you get a yes or no, when you get a yes, most people let up and say, oh, I had a great day, I'm going to kind of go play golf or do something else. When you get a yes, best thing is to go call on somebody else, because that's when you got the most energy. When you got a no, the best thing is still call on somebody else. And we learned that at Southwestern, that you could work all day long, and that last door is where you sold something. How do you keep your attitude up? I think it's talking to customers that are satisfied customers and continually looking at the value you create for people. For me, I love to talk to our clients who tell us what our programs have done for them and their people. It energizes me. Because you get a no, 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 you start to forget what you're doing. So I'd say the biggest thing is talk to happy customers, remind yourself of those things, visualize what you're really doing for people, your purpose.
That might be a good segue. Forgive me for asking another question myself, but let me segue from that and ask you to play a little game with me here. So we've got people from different fields here this morning. What would you say to Ted Mollick as an academic, a professor, to help him be a better salesperson?
Well, I think whether it's Ted or whether it's anyone here, it's, am I creating something that has value for my customers? And if it is, number one, defining who are those customers that might most get that value from it. And number two is, how do I ask questions of them to uncover their needs so that I can talk about how what I've created, that book or the speech or whatever it is going to create that value that you need. Until someone admits that they have a need, we're just, quote, pitching a product or a service. And true integrity selling ought to be only matching up with people that truly have a need. So,
All right, now, this may become repetitive, but let's talk about Trace Blankenship. He's a lawyer. So what would you counsel Trace Blankenship to do when he thinks of himself as a salesperson?
Well, as you work with law firms, we find, Trace, a lot of times, first few years, it's fine, but then fourth, fifth, sixth year, they're going to go get their own business, and they don't. So the first, it's two parts, part skill and part mindset. The mindset, we think, comes first. We've got to help people realize that selling is a noble profession, and whether you call it client acquisition or whatever you call it, it's a noble profession because of the value that you create. So it's shifting that mindset. And number two is teaching simple skills. Simple skills aren't showing up and just talking about your law firm. It's how do you build rapport with someone? Number two, how do you ask proper questions, get them talking about their needs and wants? And then if they have those, properly positioning what your firm can do for them, versus someone else. And the final is asking them to take some action. Might be a little step, might be a big step, but most people leave that out. Is ask them to take some type of a step.
Now, I picked on Ted as an academic, so I have to pick on Chip as a CEO. So what would you counsel Chip to do better as a CEO salesperson?
Man, it's just an old farm boy from Illinois advising a global CEO. Chip, what we find, and it sounds like you already do this, is we find that companies that are most successful create a culture that is imbued with positive values and ethics, but it's also a strong customer-focused service culture and a sales culture. Organizations that everybody in the company understands their role in serving and selling customers. And often people think, well, there's a silo. These people sell, these people do accounting, these people do this. But understanding what's my role in serving and selling customers. We have an insurance client that they've got about 5,000 employees at their home office, and almost all of them have been through our sales training course. Regardless of what they do, they want them to understand this is what we believe about selling. This is how we treat our clients. This is what we stand for, and here's where you fit into that type of a culture and philosophy.
All right, one last one, and then we'll take another question from the audience. Jackie Connor's a mom. What would you counsel Jackie Connor to do better as a salesperson, as a mom?
As a mom, the number 2 point I left up there was listening. And we sure aren't the best parents. We've got 3 wonderful grown children, but my wife and I found the best thing we could do is listen to our kids. Whether it's coaching someone, whether it's parenting, or whatever it might be, is listening. And that, take the word selling out. You're talking about communication.
Yeah.
Is how do you build rapport, how do you ask questions, and how do you listen? My wife and I would talk about the best times we had with our kids were in the van or in the car, and they couldn't get away from us, and we could talk a little bit, we could ask them questions, get them to talk. That's back before cell phones were so prevalent. And it's fun now, 10, 20 years later, to hear those words come back out again. So I'm not the expert on that, but I'd say listening is the best thing.
Great answer. So just so you know, this is totally unrehearsed. Mike had no idea I was going to ask him those questions, but I think you do make the point I was trying to get you to make, which is that we're all salespeople in some form or fashion, even in roles as moms and dads and daughters and sons and preachers, teachers, elders in the church.
Absolutely.
You name it, we're all in some sort of persuasion career. That's exactly right. Great answers. Other questions from the audience? Don't be timid. Yes, sir.
Could you touch on the cross-cultural nuances of what you do? I can see if we're doing business with China, India, here in the United States, I think we have to be aware of their culture, but from what you're talking about, how does that apply in dealing with those?
Great question.
That's a really good question. When we started this 30 years ago, our client base was mainly in Middle Tennessee. And we've been so fortunate, we've worked with a lot of companies that have taken us global. We've worked in about 130 countries now. And what we're finding is there are cultural differences, but we're talking about human principles are basically the same every place. Last year we trained about 100 plus people in Pakistan, in Tunisia, in Vietnam, all over. And people still want to be honored, they want to be valued, they want people to listen to their opinions, they want to interact with someone where they receive value, where it's a win-win and not someone taking advantage of them. And those principles we find work every place. This week, we had a program in Dubai, teaching folks from all over the Middle East. Next, 2 weeks from now, there'll be a group from Southeast Asia and Singapore. I can go any place. I was in Portugal 3 weeks ago. Folks from 40 countries there all had the same issues. It comes back to people issues that are the same every place.
Yeah, I was thinking when Ted was talking earlier today, he said his next book is going to be on prudence, and Barry Stowe's business in Hong Kong, Prudential Insurance business, uses Prudence, the female figure that's their spokesperson, as their icon.
Wow.
So that translates from one civilization to another and from one culture to another. In fact, you might want to interview Barry Stowe at Prudential about prudence. It would be interesting to get his thoughts for your book. Other questions from the audience? I want to go back in closing to the comments you made about listening. I thought that was really interesting, and it's so true. And I've found myself in trying to persuade people to do various things that the more I can shut my mouth and listen, not only do I get them to trust me more, but I also understand what they need,
Yeah.
which allows me to try to meet those needs. Drill into that just a little bit more. I thought that was a great point.
I think we're pretty well wired. Most of us like to talk about ourselves. And we're focused on ourselves. So if we can get people talking and us listening, number one, it shows value in them. It shows that we're honoring them and listening. And I don't mean listening where it's yeah, and I'm thinking about what I'm going to say next. It's truly listening, not just to the words, but the feelings behind the words of what they're really saying. And frankly, I think there's not enough of that every place, politics and every place. But if we can truly listen to people, I think we call it psychological reciprocity. What you give out to people comes back to you. So as we listen to people, they tend to then be impelled to listen back to us. I believe people can pick up whether you are there to help them, to hurt them. I believe that people can pick up, it's almost a sixth sense, your intentions. If you're there to do something to them or if you're there to really help them. A quick story, I grew up on this farm, and as a young boy, I'd jump in the pig pen, and I learned as a young boy that pigs could tell whether you're scared of them or not. You may see this with dogs and all kinds of animals. And my theory is that if animals can tell whether you're there to hurt them or help them, I think people are at least that sensitive.
That's great.
And when people feel that they can trust you, that you're someone there that's trying to do something for them, it opens up communication, and it really helps also with selling.
Great points, great thoughts. Thank you so much for
Thank
being here. Thank you. Let's thank Mike.